Welcome to another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. I'm Steve Gamache, and what we have this time is the Kohetsu wa, or Japanese handled Aogami Super, or AS Gyuto 180mm knife. So this line of knives has a 3-layer construction. In the center, the hard core central cutting edge steel that runs down the middle is Aogami, or Blue Paper Super reactive high carbon steel. Heat treat is taken to a pretty high level on this particular line from Chef Knives to Go. We're at 64 Rockwell. And one of the nice things about this entire line, whether you do the Western handle or the Wa handle, is that they do batch checks on the hardness for consistency, and they do a very consistent and high quality job on the heat treat. So you'll get really good steel on this. So this will maintain an edge really well. It's pretty hard, so you've got to be a little careful with your technique, as is true of a lot of these knives. The edges are thin, the steel is hard, but you get major payback in edge retention. And Aogami Super is still quite reasonably easy to sharpen, and will get very sharp. So on the outside of that steel, you've got a soft stainless cladding on either side of that. I will tell you, in practice, this cladding behaves a little bit more like semi-stainless, so don't be surprised if you get a little bit of patina and maybe some light staining on the cladding. It's kind of commonplace with these knives, so not a big deal, but just don't expect it to be kind of full-on stainless on the cladding. The weight and dimensions on these should be pretty close from knife to knife, but it might vary just a little bit. The weight on this one is very light. It's 100 grams or 3.5 ounces because the handle's light as well as the blade, of course. The edge length is about 178, so just under that 180 mark, around 7 inches from the tip to the back of the heel. And the overall length is about 314 millimeters or 12.4 inches with the handle. These knives are fairly thin overall, so I got around 2 millimeters thickness coming out of the handle above the back of the heel, and then about 1.75 halfway down. And then they do have a pretty sweet little distal taper going on here. If you look, it just kind of starts thinning out gradually, starting here down into the tip, and then nice and thin at the tip, and they're also thin at the edge. These knives perform extremely well. They're very well crafted. The blade height is not very tall. It's 41 millimeters. The handle is kind of a standard size handle. The neck's not super thin, so you've got some clearance there, but you'll have to use your technique where you don't get your knuckles sticking out, at least to get some board clearance on it. The handle is a nicely executed octagonal, what they call hoe wood or magnolia wood, with a buffalo horn ferrule. This particular one's very nice on fit and finish, really smooth between the two materials. Nice, good, tight glue up on the handle install and the tang where it goes into the knife handle. Circumference, I got just under 3 inches where the two materials meet, which is where I measure them. So, it's a fairly decent sized handle. The balance point, the handle's quite light, so that brings the balance point further forward than you might think for this kind of knife, which is about right there. It's still going to be behind where a pinch grip would be, where your pinch is, but it's very light, very flickable. This might make an awesome line knife. It's going to stay sharp a long time. It's very light. It's got a decent, good profile on it. It's thin, great performance, good for detail work. So again, it might make just a super knife or something like that, or of course home use. The out of the box edge on these is really quite sharp. It's 6, maybe 7 out of 10 on my scale. They tend to put a little bit of a thinning polish on the right side of the blade. As you hold it, you'll see a shiny section polished down to the edge, and they don't do that really as much on the left side of the blade. It's pretty much down to the edge bevel, so they kind of thin it out for performance. And it's actually fairly stiff for how thin it is. These are nice and straight, of course. Let's take a kind of a guitar beauty shot here for the video. So you can see kind of vertical finishing marks on it. They do an embossed, pressed in kanji on the right side of the blade. You can see your thinning there. You can see the core steel peeking out. Here's the left side of the blade. And if we try to get our lighting here, you'll kind of see it's a little hard to tell, but it is there. There's a cladding line, and you can see the core steel peeking out from that cladding line. It's easier to tell in person than it is on the camera with these lights. But nice fit and finish. They polish the spine, round it off a little bit, round off and polish the choil into the neck, so it's comfortable. Again, very sharp out of the box. So there's a lot to like about these knives. Let's take a look at it on the cutting board. And it's just kind of a medium belly or curve all the way through the profile. Not a particularly flat area on the knife, but kind of flows into a stop at the heel. You could do a little bit of chopping towards the very back of this, but it's not really a full-on chopper, of course. You've got a fairly decent amount of belly, and the tip for me on this one starts digging in right about there, which is really quite a bit of height for this. So you could easily rock this, definitely push-pull cuts, glide cuts. You could do tip draws with it if you wanted to. But pretty good all-around profile, but again, it's not really a chopper, although it does have a little bit of a stop into the back of it. But just a nice, smooth profile that glides along comfortably. So it's just a nice line of knives, great performance, and excellent value, awesome steel. As I said, this might make a superb line knife in a pro environment. So this is the Kohetsu wa, or Japanese handled Aogami Super Gyuto 180mm knife.